Welcome to the 13th episode of the Rain Race Podcast. Today we're going to be talking about the ongoing McLaren IndyCar rumors. We're going to be previewing the Le Mans test day, and we're going to be recapping the Monaco Grand Prix and Indianapolis 500. I'm Chris Aurelio. This is Rain Race. Let's go. I'm joined here alongside Kevin Rollins.
Hi.
Not Kyle Cuthbertson. Again,
Sucks.
I might have explained this before, but he's about as unreliable as a 2010 Peugeot 908 at Le Mans.
Which are still running, by the way.
All right, yeah, but we'll just skip over that part.
There goes that whole reliability thing.
Oh, well, there's his sub right there, David Land.
Yeah. I James Hinchcliffe bought out Kyle's ride. He's a Jay Howard, and I bought him out, so it's all good. That joke would be relevant if that had actually happened.
I mean, you could have made a 2011 Hunter Ray joke, but
that's way outdated. I try to be fresh.
Yeah, but it's fresh but inaccurate. So what are you gonna do?
Here's a new one. So Kyle is as bad as Lena Gade, so we fired him and replaced him with David. Now that's fresh.
I think we're gonna talk about that a little bit later. So. Starting off with the news here, one of the few news stories to go over this week, McLaren.
That's like the biggest one ever.
Yeah, McLaren with their ongoing IndyCar talks. Now, Zach Brown confirmed that they're eyeing an entry into the IndyCar series starting next season, and he's also in Detroit this weekend. Also, I should have said this earlier, but I just want to explain why this episode is going up so late. Talk to my work. They got in the way of everything this week, and we'll continue to be doing that next week. So,
okay, but there is a little bit of a caveat. It's not just Zach Brown. This has kind of been buried a little bit, but he's showing up with Jill DeFerrin, who they hired in the middle of May to quote-unquote evaluate the program, which pretty much everybody in the know and the scuttlebutt around the garage that was pretty much confirmation that McLaren is coming next year. Now,
and also, to kind of link it, remember, DeFerrin was Alonso's driver coach, or one of them, during his Indy 500 run last year.
Well, that's a good segue, Kevin, because Alonso's manager is also going to be there with DeFerrin and Zach Brown at Detroit. Let's put the pieces together, folks.
I saw a thing on Reddit, I think, about a quote-unquote secret meeting between Alonso and McLaren somewhere in between Catalonia and Monaco. Didn't really pick up any details on that meeting, but obviously it adds a little bit of fuel to the fire. So obviously Fernando Alonso is the biggest driver that people are keeping their eyes on for a potential driver entry next year if McLaren should end up in IndyCar. But also, I saw this on Twitter from the person who first broke the story, saying Scott Dixon's name has been going around the paddock a little bit. So,
no.
What do you think about that one?
I highly doubt it. I highly doubt it. He's going to die before he leaves Ganassi.
Yeah, exactly. Well, he almost did last year, keep in mind.
Yeah, well, I didn't mean quite that literally, but yeah. Scott Dixon, he's going to get the Rick Mears treatment at Ganassi, like Rick Mears has at Penske, where as long as he wants a job, he's going to be able to have it. Now, that being said, a Kiwi driving a Kiwi branded car, but certainly I think he would consider it. I mean, you'd be foolish not to. But if it's a McLaren effort, at least for the first year, especially when it's a partner team with Rahal or Andretti, it's going to be a one-car operation, at least for now. Possibly two if Alonso doesn't do a full-time deal and just does Indy and a couple other the marquee events, which has kind of been rumored as well. But I think it's only going to be a one-car effort in 19.
You talk about that partnership with Andretti and Rahal, and Kyle and I talked about this when they first broke this story back in the middle of May. So right now it seems like, again, should they enter, nothing's completely confirmed yet.
But it pretty much is.
Well, if you're you, then it is. So they're saying it would most likely be a partnership for the first season, like we've been saying, Andretti or Rahal. From what I've heard, it sounds like Andretti is front and foremost the primary team that they're trying to partner up with, and Rahal just kind of seems to be that team in the back that if some deal falls through with Andretti, they're always there as a backup. But, of course, they already have experience with Andretti Zach Brown and Michael Andretti are good friends at this point with the whole Indy 500 in 2017. So I'd see that as the most likely partnership we see. And then they also talked about moving on to a standalone effort in 2020.
Okay, so my thing about that is I could see the McLaren Honda thing. Yeah, right. The McLaren Andretti relationship be reunited, but they'd have to be willing to accept the fact that they'll have Honda power unless Andretti goes back to Chevy, which those rumors are going to get kicked up eventually because no secret that Honda sort of has a deficit to make up now. David, what's your thoughts on that?
That would make sense, Kevin, but they're also talking to Rahal. If they were talking to another Chevy team, I might be able to believe that. They've got 2 Honda-powered teams that they're talking to. I'd hazard a guess that the Rahal team is only in there as a negotiating tactic to get more money out of Andretti or a better deal out of Andretti. Because as far as I'm aware, Andretti is by far and away, especially considering on the month of May performance between the 2 teams, the team that I would go with if I was partnering a big program like McLaren with this team. Of course, the past history as well helps with how successful that partnership was in 2017. I would definitely say that, and also because of the fact that we've heard in the past that Michael can do, theoretically, if the funding's there, 5 or 6 full-time cars. That seems almost perfect for McLaren. The infrastructure's already there. They've only got to get in there and learn how to do it for the 2020 season.
So, I mean, the most far-fetched, out-of-context, you heard it here first, folks, theory that I came up with a couple days ago were that if McLaren joins IndyCar and if Alfa Romeo joins IndyCar as an engine supplier, could we see McLaren switch to Alfa Romeo power when they become a standalone team, or a couple of years after they become a standalone team, and then have Ferrari power in Formula One because Alfa Romeo and Ferrari are pretty much the same group? That's the most far-fetched idea I've had in my head, but I don't know. It's one that seems like it could almost make sense.
There's a lot of dominoes that have to fall to get that to happen.
Yeah.
I'm not as confident about Alfa Romeo as I would have been prior to May. It seems like when they announced the new engine formula, that would have been the time that you would have thought that we would have gotten another engine manufacturer announcement. We didn't. And considering how conservative the regulations were in the similarities to our current regulations, it certainly seems to me that at least now, or at this point, they're looking at just keeping Honda and Chevy happy, and they're not particularly... And I could be wrong. I've been wrong in the past, but it seems like they're not particularly pursuing another manufacturer right now, at least reading between the lines. I mean, I'd love to see it, but I just think there's too many dominoes that need to fall for Alfa Romeo to be coming in, especially with McLaren.
So just a couple more stories related to Indianapolis, since it's been almost 2 weeks since our last episode. The first big one that came out was Lena Gade being released from Schmidt-Peterson. This came after Hinchcliffe was, of course, bumped from the Indianapolis 500, and it was announced officially, I believe, Wednesday or Thursday of last week. So, quite an interesting thing. I don't think anyone really saw that coming. Any of the
I did.
Oh, we did. We got word
we
of
saw that coming.
We knew it was happening on bump day.
Well, I mean, like, but without any sources, though, without anybody telling you.
It's
exactly.
out of left field. Yeah.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
I mean, the thing was, you hear the little talks in the garage area, and most of the time you got to take that stuff with a grain of salt.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing about the Lena Gade was, it didn't surprise me at the end, because after the whole Hinchcliffe ordeal, someone's head had to roll. And unfortunately, it was my favorite engineer in the paddock. Again, we heard the mumbles, and me and Kyle kind of dismissed it, sort of, because the next day, the Monday practice, we seen her, or on pole day, actually, we seen her in the garages.
And on Monday.
Everything was normal.
I saw her on Monday.
Yeah, so did I. And then obviously we had that 4-day or 3-day break from the track where nothing happened, and then during that time period, it was announced that she was let go. Now, the thing that kind of bothers me was the way that Schmidt kind of made their press release, how they made it sound like it was mutual. It wasn't. She was fired. I mean, if it was mutual,
that's a
I'm
press
pretty sure
release
Lena
for you.
would not have deleted all of her social medias.
That whole situation really stunk. I mean, again, like you said, she was at the track. She was in uniform, biking around in the garage area, presumably working on the race setup for the other 3 cars. Here's my theory. I just thought of this. They may have been keeping her on the payroll just in case they bought a ride, in which case they would have kept her on to engineer the car for the 500 because they didn't have another option available to them. But as soon as it was official that they weren't going to be in the show, out goes Lena.
And
now,
I think, well, overall, that's
can,
just kind of a shitty situation, if I'm honest, because
for sure, yeah.
It's not like she was a terrible race engineer by any standards whatsoever. It was her second oval race ever, and
they almost won the first one.
Yeah, and Hinch was 5th in points before Indianapolis, so I mean, a little bit of a premature move, I'd say so, but
SPM handled her so badly. I mean, they really didn't give her a chance to. Here's the thing, that with Hinchcliffe on bump day, I mean, there was a bunch of circumstances that could be to blame. And, I mean, it was just a bad situation all around. And they really didn't give Lena a proper chance to show what she could do. Besides the 5 races that she engineered prior to Indy. I mean, it sucks. It's racing, but I think SPM should have given her another shot at it. And I have a distaste for SPM, not because I'm biased because Lena Gade's awesome because she used to work for Audi Sport, but, you know, any engineer should not be that unceremoniously fired. Now, with Lena, I know some people were like, oh, well, she's a sports car engineer. She needs to go back to where she came from. I heard that from one person in particular. And she probably will. I could see her going to Mazda Team Yost in IMSA.
Well, I think a lot to do with the firing was that Aero needed a head. I don't think it was necessarily SPM. I think it was Aero. They needed to show somebody on the board, point a finger at somebody, and say, okay, it's their fault. We got rid of them, and now let's move forward. I feel like that feels like a corporate suit thing to do, and that's what it feels like to me. I don't think necessarily the team would have wanted to get rid of her, but somebody's head had to roll.
Staying on the topic of Indianapolis here, obviously we saw Scuderia Corsa with a phenomenal performance, especially in the ending stages of last week's Indy 500, and they have announced recently that they're already committed to a 2019 Indianapolis 500 entry. So I don't believe they said whether or not it would be with Ray Hall Letterman or even like any partnership yet. Perhaps they could go
too early.
Yeah, perhaps they could go on as a standalone, but I think for them to already be committed to another year of Indianapolis 500 entries, it's just fantastic news to hear, especially this early on.
Well, I mean, obviously their driver is going to be Oriol Servia. I'm going to say that right now. Obviously it's going to be Servia because there's quite a few perks with guys like Servia and Sato. Like, I don't know, those guys are Honda drivers and they get free engines. And that's a perk.
Yeah, that's a small plus. But
well, I would say this is. I mean, I said it in the Red Pill. This is an incredibly positive sign for the series. It really is. To have a team that came in for this race, qualified by the skin of their teeth, no doubt about it. But once they got in the show, they were very competitive. And you've got to hand it to IndyCar. I think they've really done a good job handling all of this situation, especially with the bump day. That you kept pretty much everybody happy. And you would think that Pippa Mann's still going to be back despite the fact that she would get bumped. Seems like Aero's going to be back, and certainly I would say most of the small teams that made the show will be back as well, plus the Laziers and plus McLaren and all these other elements out there floating around. I mean, there's a lot of cars that could be entering the Indy 500 next year. Let's just say that.
And I mean, you know, there's that age-old discussion about, well, age-old now, about, the effect that Bump Day had, and it had nothing but a positive effect because it adds to the lure of the race, and it makes making the race that much more special again. And I think that's going to draw teams as well, not to mention the cheaper cars.
And the last bit of news here I want to go over before we jump into the recaps, mentioned this in the previous episode as well, both Manor cars being forced to skip Spa due to funding issues related to CEFC, which is their title sponsor. Well, the good news is that both cars will be on the grid at Le Mans, which is fantastic news to hear. There's a little bit of concern during the Spa weekend whether or not they'd show up to Le Mans, but they are there for the test this weekend, and I can't 100% confirm this yet, but I've heard that they have a new title sponsor in the form of Baxi, which is a Chinese company, and they also sponsored Jackie Chan DC before, I think, and also Signatech Alpine.
When they were with they sponsored Jackie Chan when they were partnered with Alpine in 2016.
Yep. So obviously that's great news to hear. We'll have all of the LMP1 cars on the grid for Le Mans. Also, there was some drama with the BR1 cars and safety concerns, but all of them are committed to Le Mans at the current moment, which is obviously fantastic to hear.
Well, here's actually a little bit of an interesting note. I was catching up on the news and stuff heading into the test day this weekend, and the BR engineering cars are technically going to be running illegally in terms of the stuff that they have on the car is not homologated yet.
Well, it's a test day, though, so it's not... You don't have to have all the parts homologated for the test day, I don't think.
Yeah, but the parts that are not homologated are the ones that they put on the car to prevent them from flipping again. So they're waiting on approval from the FIA, which it will probably get granted considering it's a safety thing. So it's nothing really to worry about. They're definitely going to be on the grid with the updates. I just thought it was an interesting note.
Yep.
Well, the FIA would be stupid to prevent them from entering or getting on the grid for the race, because pretty much at this point, LMP1 really needs, like you said, Chris, they need all of those cars on the grid that they can, because otherwise it's going to be a black eye if 4 cars are on the grid by the time they get to the race, especially considering that everybody was banging on about the death of this class in the winter, and now we're here almost at Le Mans, and it's 8-10 cars. It almost looks more healthy than it did with all the hybrids in the class.
And after Le Mans, it's supposed to be 11 cars with the second Bicolos. So,
And I really don't want to speculate about BOP and EOT.
Let's not.
Before we get into lap times.
I almost got Kevin going on that.
So
I was 1 second away from making that point.
Yeah, I'm going to leave that to next week's episode. Kevin, don't even start
let's leave that to the Le Mans pre-show.
Well, no, let's go back a week to the recaps from Sunday, starting off with the Monaco Grand Prix. Now, these two chumps were in Indianapolis at the time. And
I watched a lap.
We were watching.
I watched one lap.
Now, in our defense, we were watching the greatest race in motorsports that tops Monaco, the Daytona 500, any other stupid show that NASCAR can put on.
No, I went to the Indy 500. I didn't go to the Coke 600.
No, I was saying that we went to the greatest.
I know. I was at the Indy 500. I wasn't at the Coke 600.
I know.
Kevin, you're not picking up on this, are you?
Of course.
Kevin, I was implying that the Coke 600 was the greatest race in the world.
Shame on you.
Because it is, right?
The Coke 150, 150, 150, 150, you mean?
Oh, God.
Anyway.
Yeah, I was in a B-dubs, and I actually watched some of that race. I couldn't believe how much caution there was.
Hey, did you see
like there was
Twitter
a car
got hacked
spinning
tonight?
out. I saw the B-dubs Twitter. That was hilarious.
Oh, my God. Hey, yeah.
Yeah.
They were throwing shade at Wendy's.
Oh, no. Yeah, they were saying a lot of other questionable things, too, but...
Oh, were they? I just saw the Wendy's.
Yeah, let's let's steer off that, though.
Did they go down the Roseanne path?
Oh, no. Well, a little more than that.
I'll
send you a screenshot after this episode's over. But,
I will say this, though. David's had his moment of fame at B-dubs. So.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I forgot I could hack the TV. I should have done that.
She got revenge and put me on the TV.
Hack the TV, just meaning you're going to Chromecast one of your own videos to the smart TV that they have on the wall.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing. After the Indy 500, I had to go into hibernation for 2 days. I literally could not function at all. I just kept falling asleep for 2 days because that's what happens when you spend an entire month at Indianapolis just going nonstop for however many 3 weeks or whatever it is.
It's what it feels like to have an actual job.
I know, right? Damn, I got to do it more often.
Should we get back to the Monaco Grand Prix? Well, first off, I just want to start off on Monaco here with Daniel Ricciardo, because there are few laps in this modern age of racing where safety is a major priority, where I just look at the lap and I say, wow. And it just really kind of leaves shock on your face. But when you look at the onboard from Ricciardo in his qualifying lap at Monaco, my God, that's one of those few laps nowadays that really just dropped my jaw. It was phenomenal. It was almost 2.5 seconds up on the qualifying time from last year. So props to him, and brought that pace into the race. Now,
until he had engine issues.
Yeah, he had engine issues. I believe they say he was down 150 horsepower. I think it was because of the MGU H or K. I don't know which. I think it was the MGU H, but don't quote me on that. Wasn't working, and he was down 100 to 150 horsepower. And Sebastian Vettel was pretty much crawling right behind him the whole time, 2-3 seconds back, even caught up within a second at a couple of points, but just never really could find a way to get past him. And that seemed to bring up a lot of questions about the competitiveness of Monaco. Now, I don't know why these questions were just brought up now, because I think it should be quite obvious to anybody, given the layout of Monaco and the cars you're racing on it, that you're not going to get competitive racing pretty much at all. It's not what Monaco is all about. But yeah, it was definitely interesting to see that the cars really could fend off, or that Ricciardo could fend off Vettel even with that much of a horsepower deficit.
Well, Monaco is and it has and pretty much always will be the traditional race of Formula One. It's essentially actually. I mean, we make fun of races as parades. It really is a parade. That's essentially what the Monaco Grand Prix is. The race is essentially determined in qualifying, unless you have a 96 situation where there's a lot of rain and Olivier Panis wins because he's one of 3 cars left running in the race. That's always what it's going to be. And I kind of find it funny that there's a major contrast between the same kind of discussion that's been had at the end of the Monaco Grand Prix versus the end of the Indy 500. Same complaints, but then you look at Twitter and Fernando Alonso is talking about how competitive and exciting the Indy 500 is, and yet all IndyCar fans could talk about is how boring the Indy 500 is. Funny how that works.
I mean, the problem with Monaco is, and I mean, usually I would criticize Lewis Hamilton because he's complaining about something because he didn't win, but he has a legitimate reason to complain because, the cars, they had troubles passing before on such a narrow track. So what do we do with the cars? We make them wider. And if you try to pass, you're going to end up on your lid like we saw last year with
Fairline and Butter.
Yeah.
Butter.
and then you see what happened this year with, I believe it was Leclerc and Hartley.
Well, that was a brake failure.
Yeah,
that was a brake failure, wasn't it? They literally told Hartley, you've got to get away from him. And then the next corner he got run at the back of. That's kind of funny.
I mean, there were people who even went as far as saying, why is the Monaco Grand Prix still a thing? And I just had to cringe at those comments, because if you watch Monaco expecting an exciting or competitive race, you're looking at the wrong thing, buddy.
Yeah.
I mean, and I have no problem with Monaco the way it is. Honestly, I love the Monaco Grand Prix. I just think it's one of those races where you can kind of feel the purpose behind it. You can feel the energy of it. And in my opinion, it's one of the few races nowadays that still holds that feeling. But to go as far as saying that they should even consider dropping it from the calendar in the future, it's just so far-fetched and unnecessary, especially as one of the Triple Crown races. That's just one of the biggest complaints I have coming from all that.
Monaco's like Indianapolis and Le Mans. No matter how much of a shit show they are, they will never, ever die. no matter how bad the races get.
Oh, well, that was the other thing I kept hearing about Indianapolis is people were talking about, oh, the crowd's going to go down next year because the race was boring. You guys do realize how many people show up at the Indy 500 simply because, A, it's the Indy 500, and B, it's a big party. Like, the crowd sizes are not affected really all that much by racing quality. There's probably about 100,000 true racing fans there and 200,000 people there for the party and the spectacle. That's always what these big races have been, like Le Mans and Monaco. Same thing. There's the hardcore race fans, no doubt about it, but there's also a big party festival atmosphere built around these races.
There really isn't much to talk about wrapping up on Monaco here because, like we've been going over, it wasn't a very action-filled race, but Ricciardo was able to hold off Vettel and take home the victory. I think Kyle actually predicted the top 3 correct.
Well, that was easy. He probably just cheated. He probably looked at the qualifying results and said, well, there you go.
We did it before qualifying because we knew that qualifying determines the results of Monaco, barring any major incidents, but... So yeah, we did it all the way before qualifying, and I think he picked the top 3 correct. I know he picked Ricciardo to win, so props to you, Kyle. Shame you're not here, waiting for your reason on why. But anyway, let's get on to what will definitely be the longest portion of this episode, Indy 500 recaps.
And this is the part where me and David start doing our usual thing.
Oh, God.
Yeah,
I'll try to rein it in a little bit.
Yeah, just please
watch my 39-minute rant on it if you really want me to go hard.
Yeah.
I'll try to keep it reined in.
We'll start the ball rolling here. I'll just say that race, from pretty much lap 30, I already felt an IRO 5 racing vibe there at Indianapolis because it was kind of the leader pulls out and you have some action, some battling going on behind, but nobody really could seem to pass the leader that much on track. And that's really what I saw back when I started watching IndyCar back in 08, 09, 2010, pretty much.
Well, let me take the opportunity to toot my own horn, and actually that of Kevin and a few other of the people who came on the IndyCar Red Pill live shows. I mean, I was shocked that the people, either the people in the IndyCar bubble, I guess you could say, either didn't believe that the race was going to be like this, or they didn't want to say the race was going to be like this because they had interests elsewhere to make sure they weren't saying, oh, well, the Universal Air is going to make the racing worse. We said from pretty much day one, I even think I said it all the way back when they revealed the car wasn't going to have bumpers anymore, that we were going to see a more spread out race. We were going to see aero push become a thing again, and we weren't going to see the slingshot racing that's happened in the last few years. And it was obvious from the first practice session, but yet for almost the entire practice week, we heard that they were going to be changing the lead twice a lap. I think Simon Pagenaud said that. I'm like, there's no way. It turned out that was exactly the case. It was, yeah, like you said, it was an old school Indy 500 for sure.
You know, the sad part is a lot of the people, and I've seen this comment a lot on social media, that people have grown too accustomed to, you know, that high action racing.
Yep.
That when things go back to the way that they used to be, you know, nobody's happy. I was perfectly fine with the Indy 500. I mean, it was everything I expected.
It really comes down to what you watched the Indy 500 for, what era you started watching it in. Because if you're a recent fan, you grew up with the DW12. 2012, 2013, 2014, we had record numbers of passing there. And really, if that's the standard that you grew up with, then this race isn't going to look as exciting. And if you started watching back in 08, 09, 2010 like I did, or even I guess you could say back in the 90s, a little bit more of a stretch
Guilty.
there.
Guilty as charged.
Yeah, the old man of the group here.
Let me go get my walker.
Yeah. I mean, I think that felt like, for lack of a better word, a traditional Indy 500 to us. And I know you, David, in particular, were a critic of the 2013 style level of passing we had. But
well, the problem with the 2013 passing was that nobody wanted to lead the race. I think that was my main criticism. I think the 16 and 17 races, by and large, were about as good as an Indy 500 can get. Sure, the wave around rule sucks, and there probably shouldn't have been 25 cars on the lead lap at the end of it. But you look at that competition at the front of the field, it doesn't get much better than that. But the 13 was just it was ridiculous. I mean, imagine if like a Viso had won that race. I think we'd talk about it a little bit differently. We kind of sweep it under the rug because Kanaan won, and it was like, okay, he deserved one anyway.
I think I summed it up the best way I could. It all comes back to the era that you grew accustomed to. So we didn't see a record number of lead changes here. But
it was still the seventh most all time.
Yeah, the action surely could have been better. And that's actually what I want to get into here is what they could do. And I know you were talking on Twitter about if they make any modifications, they better be slight. Because you make any large modifications, you could have a problem on your hands. Mm-hmm. So what do we think we could do next year to make these cars a little bit more competitive on Indianapolis?
Well, I think Kevin was there when we met Craig Hampson, who is the lead engineer of the Bourdais car, worked for Newman Haas for several years, very experienced guy. And he said to us that they're really lacking for rear downforce. So he suggested that they add some wickers to the back of the wing there. There was a quote.
By the way, they used to have wickers on the rear wing when they tested the car originally about a year ago. Because all right, so here's a little fact. And this is from Greenlight, by the way. They said that the diecast, the autograph car that we got, was based off of the original car, the cars that tested with Montoya and Servia last July, and they did have wickers on the rear wing.
It's weird that those were removed then. Here's the thing about the testing of the Universal Aero kits. It's kind of weird because it almost felt like they were really hitting it hard early on, and then they stopped to provide the kits to the teams. But the teams didn't actually build the cars up with the Universal Aero kits till almost like February. So we missed like a good probably 6 months of testing time that could have maybe been used that wasn't. It just seemed like this car wasn't tested enough in enough conditions to really get a good feel on it until we got to the month of May, and then at that point you can't change anything. So, but again, like you said, Chris, like I said, I guess like you said, like I said, if they make too big of modifications to this thing, it's gonna taint the product certainly, because if you go too far in the opposite direction, suddenly it's gonna be too much of a good thing, I guess.
One thing I think that they do need to target and try to fix on the cars is I guess this kind of ties into the rear downforce, is the car's stability when they're in the slipstream, because we saw over the practice week and qualifying and the beginning of the race when it was pretty much caution-free that there was very low drama. And I think during the AeroKit era, we grew accustomed to all this drama, all these crashes during qualifying and practice. But when the cars were running on their own, there really wasn't a lot of drama. It's when you got into the slipstream of other cars, that's when it started to become a problem. And this race really kind of proved the cautions breed cautions theory, because once you had those cars lined up in a big pack, all that dirty air was pushing you around, and you had drivers like Elio spin out, and you had drivers like Danica, Bourdais, they spun out. So I think that if they could try some rear downforce modifications there, just try something to make the racing in the slipstream a little bit more consistent, because all the crashes that we saw, all the spins that we saw in the slipstream were very unpredictable. Either they happened or they didn't, and it wasn't like a common, if you're in the slipstream you're going to spin. It really came down to kind of just fate at that point.
Well, it's not just the rear wing. I've also heard that the front wing is very inefficient. So when you get behind, well, there you go. When you get behind somebody with an inefficient front wing, what little downforce you have on that thing is completely gone. And so that's why we saw that. And again, it's the front wing is the biggest aerodynamic part on that car that's really producing a whole lot of aerodynamic downforce, at least on the top side of the car. So I almost feel like they need to redesign. It's weird because if they redesign it, they're going to cost the teams a whole lot of money. And it's weird. Again, that's kind of my whole point, is don't step too far because you're either going to cost everybody a whole lot of money, you're going to ruin the racing, or you're going to create a situation that you didn't anticipate and possibly something dangerous.
By the way, I want to go back to what David said about how they really didn't have that much time. To give you an idea, the Universal Aero Kit ran at Indianapolis a whole 3 times before we actually saw it go out for official practice, because you had the initial rollout with Servia and Montoya. Then you had a test in the fall with Dixon and Hinchcliffe. So that's only 4 drivers.
And only 2 cars on track at once.
And then each time. And then we got to a test we were supposed to have in March that didn't happen. And then when that test finally did happen, it was actually too late, and it was actually in the month of May.
It might as well have been Indy 500 practice at that point, which it essentially was.
Yeah, so, if that test session would have happened, say, back in March, I'm pretty sure there would have been amendments to the aero kit, very simple stuff, just simple wickers and stuff like that. But I think there would have been amendments to it. But since, the timing got all screwed up because of weather, because it was really weird here with snow in April, it just didn't happen. And obviously they're going to amend it going forward. But again, as David said, hopefully it's nothing too dramatic.
Just jumping forward to the end of the race here, it was pretty much shaping up to be a classic Indy 500 economy run finish, like we saw in 2016, only pretty much on steroids, because you had drivers like Oriol Servia up front for Scuderia Corsa, and you had Stefan Wilson leading with all the way up until like 4 laps to go. And my fingers were crossed. It was really looking like it could be a surprise winner again. Unfortunately, all of those guys had to pit for fuel. But that race got really, really close to what could have been a classic Indy 500 finish for the books.
Well, that's the thing that I've kind of thought about this too, is that, like, sure, it's fun to have surprise winners in the biggest race in the world, but if it's a surprise winner every single year, it's no longer a surprise. Having a willpower win, well, yeah, sure, it's maybe boring to us hardcore people, no doubt about it, but at the same time, he's a champion of the sport, one of the winningest drivers, active or all time. He needed an Indy 500 win for his resume, so I can't really complain about it. Sure, do I wish that Wilson and Harvey and Servia had fuel to the end so that Power would have had to fight them for the win? Absolutely. But,
well, hold on. You said if every year it's a surprise winner, though. Sato last year wasn't really a surprise winner. He had pace all race long.
Yeah, he was.
He really wasn't,
yeah,
though.
He was a surprise from the perspective of not a lot of... Everybody kind of laughed before that. How soon we forget? Sato was a joke before last year. Everybody was like, he's the guy that crashed out in the last lap. He was almost like a Hildebrand, where that's all anybody talked about. They don't anymore because he won.
Yeah, but Sato was quietly fast that entire month, is what people sort of decide to skip
but
over.
so was
Chris,
Hildebrand that year.
But Chris, here's the thing, though. The Andretti guys were pretty much, they said all month, I remember this, oh yeah, Sato, he doesn't really fit in that well with the team. He's not really happy, blah, blah, blah. And he really wasn't there with the group, He was sort of cast off into the B team side of things with Jack Harvey. He was borderline B team there. But, saying Sato wasn't a surprise is ridiculous.
I'm just saying, a surprise winner to me, like, I think Rossi is a clear example of that. Coming from what looked like it could have been a disastrous race for him.
By your logic, he was fast too. He set the fastest lap of the race when he won.
Sato never had any real issues that made you think, all right, he's out of this, he's done, during the race in 2017.
No, but he also didn't look like he was a race winner until the last 50 laps of it.
There you go. If it didn't look like he was a race winner until the last 5 laps of it, then that would be a surprise winner, in my opinion. But
I mean, Chris, here's the logic we're trying to push to you, though. Does Jack Harvey sound like an Indy 500 winner? No,
he doesn't.
It could happen. But
if he was running up front all race long, then it wouldn't really be a surprise. Sato was quietly up front during 2017.
Yeah, but a surprise winner at the start of the race and a surprise winner at the end of the race is a little bit different because the race is like a symphony. It's like an opera. It plays out throughout it, and you know who the contenders are. Sure, in the context of the race, Sato was not necessarily a surprise winner. But in the context of his career, in the context of the month leading up to that, certainly I think he was a surprise winner. Same with Rossi the year before. And that would have been the same thing for certainly a Stephen Wilson or a Jack Harvey. Jack Harvey started on the last row of the grid. But by the same token, that also means that Alexander Rossi wouldn't have necessarily been a surprise winner if he had won from the back row. Even though it's an unlikely victory, he's already won it before. He was clearly fast throughout the day and clearly fast throughout the month. Jack Harvey was not. You dig?
All right, I kind of see where you're coming from, but whatever. Let's move on from this argument. You mentioned Rossi. I want to talk about.
Chris is always
no, you know
right.
what? I want to, Kevin. That's not always true. Keep in mind, I said always. I want to talk about Rossi though because he started 32nd and finished 4th.
Yep. We knew he wasn't going to stay there for very long.
2 oval races. Well, I mean that's quite a given because he's Andretti, but we saw at Phoenix as well. He was the guy who was saying, "Oh, look at Rossi on the run." Indianapolis, look at Rossi on the run. And it's only the second oval race of the season. So this is a guy who, at the beginning of 2016, was admittedly afraid of ovals. So I think that it's proving at this point that he's one of the most daring oval drivers that IndyCar has at the moment, which is really impressive to see in only 2 seasons.
I mean, you got a guy who had a Grand Prix background, who was a basic nobody in IndyCar. Then he went out and won the Indy 500 on an economy run, and that gained his confidence, and now he is unstoppable.
Well, what a great era to be alive for, I would say, because not only do you have Rossi, who is, I mean, by far, it's weird because a lot of people, and myself included, talk up Newgarden a lot, but I think if you put him in equal cars, I think Rossi would probably beat Newgarden. I think he's probably the most talented guy, not only in the series, but God, put him in a Mercedes and see what happens. You know, I think he's that talented, and it's so fantastic to live in this era where we've essentially got like the new AJ or Mario. I'm not necessarily comparing them, but it's like we've got the guys who are the faces of the sport now. The Newgardens, the Rossis, the Rahals. They're here. They're American, and they're contenders. And it's going to be one of those things that will help grow the sport long term. Hopefully, they all stay. Yeah,
and I forget who he's passing exactly, but it was in the short shoot between 1 and 2.
Munoz.
It was Munoz. And he's just got
Which is
so
just surprising.
Close to that wall. Yeah, teammate, you probably don't want to take yourself and him out.
Well, and Munoz is one of the ballsiest guys, too. So, like, Rossi out-ballsying Munoz at Indy is a pretty big statement.
And also, I wanted to point this out earlier, and now is a pretty good time. Some of the people who are saying that this year's Indy 500 sucked didn't witness it in person, and they were relying on the sucky-ass ABC coverage.
Yep. That was a big contributing factor to it. That's why everybody thought Davison was a move like dangerous, because they showed him twice on the broadcast. It was both times he got loose in turn 3. Outside of that, he was running pretty competitively.
The last thing I want to talk about here, Will Power coming away with the victory. Kind of a little bit of redemption from 2015 when Montoya took it away from him in one of the final laps.
Yes, show me respect, motherfucker.
Oh, yes. If you didn't hear his post-race radio communications, it's not safe for work, I'll just say that much.
By the way, that was definitely about Ed Carpenter.
Yeah, that's
no matter what
he
he says, it's definitely about Ed Carpenter.
So,
what's funny is Ed after the race. Well, Ed after the race said that he would hire Will someday. So I thought that was pretty funny.
I don't know, man. Though would Will go from Penske to Ed Carpenter?
Stranger things have happened. Look at the guys that Roger has gotten rid of in the past couple of years.
Hey, man, you know what? That's just like Kvyat being sent back down to Scuderia Toro Rosso.
It takes 1 year of a guy crashing out of the Indy 500 like Montoya for Roger to go, hey, that Joseph Newgarden guy sure is fast. Bye, Juan.
Go off to IMSA where you belong.
Aw.
So we talked about how the Indy 500 was sort of your traditionalist 500, if you will. If you want to talk about a race at Indianapolis that wasn't the same level of competitiveness, that was, in fact, more competitive, how about we just quickly talk about the Freedom 100? Because
God,
what a hell of a race that was.
It wasn't even the closest finish, which is saying something, but that race was 40 laps of green flag, no yellows, and even though it was only 8 cars and really only 7 competitive for most of the race, sad as it sounds, that was probably the best Freedom 100 I've ever seen.
Oh, easily.
Yes.
And you had cars, I mean, and I don't think anyone has a problem with the Freedom 100 racing like that. It just puts on a good show.
Well, that's the thing. It's a developmental series. It's supposed to be 150% about the drivers. Make all the cars the same. Throw the drivers out there and see who has the biggest balls. That's the idea of the Freedom 100.
That's kind of what IndyCar is right now. All the cars are the same, but that's a topic.
Yeah, but they don't race like it. They do not race like it.
But yeah, I mean, just what a show that the Freedom 100 put on overall. Not too much to go over on that note. Again, only 8 cars. But from 2 guys who were there in person, how would you rank that among the other ones that we've seen over the years?
Oh, my God.
Oh, race flag to flag, it was the best one ever. Was the finish as close as it's been or as exciting as it's been? No. But you can't deny the racing quality. I mean, that was just spectacular. And such respectful driving, too. There was only maybe a couple times where I was like, oh, boy, they are going to wreck it because they're a bunch of, very high-T teenagers out there running into each other. But no, they were very respectable most of the time, and it was a hell of a show.
Well, the commentators...
You have a bunch of teenagers that are trying to get next to the Cooper Tire girls.
Yeah, that's true. That's good incentive. That explains why Herta drove like he did at the freaking Grand Prix. But anyway.
So the commentators in particular seem to be saying that Colton Herta would be a sitting duck out of turn 4 in the final lap.
We all thought that too. We all thought that.
But he really didn't even make it seem like a big threat. I mean, obviously, the finish was close, but it really looked like he would be that sitting duck on the last lap, and it turned out that just wasn't the case.
Well, O'Ward got an understeer out of 4, I believe, if I remember correctly. He was coming in behind,
running wide out of 4.
Well, he got an understeer. He was right behind Herta, and for whatever reason, he just got some dirty air, and the thing pushed up, and then that's where he lost the race because he lost just a little bit of momentum, and it was probably just enough momentum that he couldn't pass him by the line.
Well, he also lost some out of 2 as well.
Yeah, but with the Indy Lights cars, you can pass twice a lap. So, I mean, even if you screw up in 2, you've got half the track to get them back.
Well, let's face it, we didn't just see like twice a lap. Realistically, we saw every corner. There was a pass almost.
Yep.
And I remember because we were sitting next to each other, we thought that they were going to crash every 2 or 3 laps.
Oh yeah, when they went 3, I mean that's the first time I've ever seen, we all think of the 2013 finish where it was 4 wide and they were 3 wide for 2 corners. They were 3 wide the majority of the time they went into 1 and 3. It was unbelievable, especially because Victor Franzoni, who I believe had a mechanical failure during the race, which is kind of unfortunate, that kind of knocked him out of it because he put a 3 wide move on the first freaking lap in turn 3, and I have to applaud the gusto on that one because that was just.
When you pass,
I was gonna say, didn't Franzoni
really pass half the field in a lap?
Didn't Franzoni have a tire puncture?
I don't know. We couldn't really tell. I mean, we were kind of far down in turn 1, so it's kind of hard to see the pit lane. All I know is he came in and out of the pits a couple times.
Yeah, they were trying not to go a lap down because they were hoping for a caution to come up, and it never did. But
which allowed our new Lord and Savior, Davey Hamilton Jr., to finish up in 7.
Just ending off this episode here, just what we have to look forward to. The Le Mans test is this weekend, so this is where we can see the first true indication of what the pace will be for Le Mans, or not, or the opposite, if you want to not show your pace and sandbag. Here come the names.
Toyota.
Oh. All right, I thought Kevin was going to say another team in particular, but all right, we're not going to go there.
Corvette and Toyota, they're sandbagging already. Are there going to be 3 Toyotas this year or just 2?
2.
Oh, no.
They don't need a third one.
Well, I'll tell you what. Here's a hot take. That's a mistake. That's a big mistake. And they will pay for it. That's a big mistake.
Is that your expert opinion there?
That's
Mr.
my
David?
expert opinion. That's a big mistake. They couldn't even win the race. They couldn't even win the race last year with 3 cars, and they think reducing it to 2 is a good idea. Big mistake, Toyota. You're going to pay for that one.
Okay, so let's put last year versus this year in perspective. Last year, they were battling the Porsches, and we've seen what happened with the 3 cars, how they virtually all died in the same hour.
2 of the 3 cars got hit by lap cars, though. I mean, that's all it takes. That's all it takes.
No, only one of them got hit by a lap car. The 8 car had a hybrid failure. The reason that they finished as far down as they did, which was 7th, was because the Porsche guys had the same issue. They went on to win the race because they replaced it in such a faster time. My point being, the only way Toyota can lose Le Mans this year is if it's really, really hot, like it was last year, and the hybrid systems fail.
Or if a Ferrari knocks them off the road. Somebody call Rob Kaufman. We need to make IndyCar or Le Mans.
And Michael
exciting.
Waltrip.
And Michael Waltrip.
AF
no,
Waltrip,
but Kaufman's
baby,
the guy
bring
who
it
almost
back.
killed, what's his nut? Lauderer.
Bring back AF Waltrip Racing.
What about Lauderer?
He freaking almost killed Lauderer, didn't he not?
No, it was Rockenfeller.
No.
Rockefeller. He almost killed Rockefeller. I always get Rockefeller and Lauderer confused. I don't know why.
Yeah, well, Rockenfeller's in Corvette this year, so there's still a possibility. We also have IndyCar and IMSA at Belle Isle this weekend.
Boring.
Okay, I thought I just heard a snore. But IMSA is only bringing their prototype and GTD classes because GTLM's in Le Mans.
You know what? You know what would probably be easier, or you know what would probably be more entertaining than the races themselves?
Milwaukee.
Wondering
Michigan
who's going to
500.
get robbed at Detroit.
Oh, God.
Kevin, the only recent drivers that have gotten robbed were in Indianapolis.
Or Monaco. Or no, that was Mexico. That was Brazil.
No, it was Sao Paulo.
Yeah.
But
Bernie Ecclestone got beat up one time.
Hey, that sounds like an F1 race. F1's going to Montreal next weekend, so we'll keep
the
posted
French
on
Canadians.
Montreal. And the big one, Le Mans, is in 2 weeks' time, and I'm really hyped about that. So we'll have a whole barrage of Le Mans content coming this month. Might even end up doing a couple more of those extra episodes before Le Mans. And we hinted at a special with Ricky Taylor. However, my work got into the way of that. And then Kyle, like I said, has also been really unreliable. So that might not happen before Le Mans. So we'll keep you posted on that because he's obviously a very busy guy at this time of year.
I mean, it'd probably be more interesting after Le Mans because we could debrief with him about it.
Yeah.
Just hope he doesn't do the same thing his brother did last year because then he'll be in trouble.
Oh, no.
Oh.
Hey, man.
Oh.
Hey.
But hey, Rockefeller's back at Le Mans for the first time since 2012.
Yep. Call up AF Waltrip. Anyway, do you two have...
That was the last time AF Waltrip raced at Le Mans, too.
Yeah, they weren't invited to the party anymore.
Brian Vickers.
Okay. I mean, let's face it. They were the ones that drove a flaming Ferrari down pit lane.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. Yeah, that's a big no-no.
Yeah.
They probably burned out of their pit every lap, too. Backed up on the pit lane.
Running a burning car down the pit lane and then refueling said car.
Well, it works in NASCAR, man. Just duct tape the son bitch.
You know, that's about as effective, or that's about as applauded by the organizers as reversing down the pit lane.
Well, that's what I said. You know,
Toyota did.
Get the duct tape out, reverse down the pit lane, burn out, do all that fun stuff.
You know what we should do? There's been a lot of banter going on here, even though I hope that wouldn't happen. But we should just do a thing. For everyone who made it this far into the episode, here is that Simon Pagenaud interview that Kevin got after Indy 500 qualifying that we promised last week. But, of course, I was busy and Kyle wasn't available.
I was going to say, you better use that.
So there you go.
Drove.
We're going to put it right here, right now.
So we're here with IndyCar driver Simon Pagenaud, who is definitely one of the guys to watch coming into this weekend. So you guys got into the top 9. You held the pole for quite some time. What was that feeling of nervousness like?
Very high. It's 2 days of high stress. Qualifying is definitely one of those most stressful moments in racing all around. My whole life has been about racing, but this moment in Indy is just very special. So getting the pole was at first was incredible, and I really hope we could keep it, but Carpenter did a better job and got it.
And obviously you guys weren't really the favorites because you have a hometown guy going up against, but overall though you got second, which is something really impressive. So how does the car really feel to you? How does it translate from the old Chevy Aero kit from last year?
It's a good question. The new Aero kit is a lot more edgy to drive. It's a little bit more difficult to follow in traffic. It's a little bit more tire wear. It's a lot more driving involved, which I love. I'm very excited about it. It's more important to get the car well balanced, and on Sunday it's going to be very difficult to be the best you can be. So I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a great challenge.
Have you had any Code Brown moments yet this month?
No Code Brown this month. No, I've had a few in Phoenix, but not here yet. So it's been pretty smooth sailing.
And your little autograph battle with Joseph Newgarden, how's that going for you?
Well, I think it's going really well. I think it's pretty much the end of it. I think we've escalated to a whole high, different level, I would say, and I think it's pretty much over. So I guess I won, but Joseph told me he was done with it. So it was fun. It was one of those things that was very organic. We didn't really calculate anything, and nobody got really involved except us, and that was really fun.
How confident do you feel with your car going into race day? Because you got time to practice with the race setup. Do you feel pretty confident?
Yeah, tonight I think we just practice last practice before Friday Cup day, and I thought we're pretty strong in traffic. Obviously we're starting up front, so that's going to help. We need a little bit more front grip to make it even better, and I think we can find it.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hope you enjoyed that one. Kind of randomly placed and out of context and out of order because the Indy 500 already happened. They're all in Detroit right now, but we had to get that out there because Kevin drove out of his way to get it.
If you'd put those up separately, that would have been
I'll just
a
put
cool
it on
thing
Twitter separately. But
I know, but you should have put them up as soon as you got access to the file. Just like Simon Pagenaud interview.
So that's going to wrap it up for this episode of the Rain Race Podcast. Thank you to Kevin for joining once again. Thank you to David for subbing for Kyle.
Yeah,
Thanks
look at
to
that. Super
Kyle
sub.
for
Just
being
call me Roberto
unreliable.
Moreno.
Absolutely. And we'll see you hopefully again on Monday. We'll be recapping Detroit and the Le Mans
Boring.
test, all that good stuff. Hope you all enjoyed this one, and we'll catch you in the next one.